Remember searching SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. I'm Fahima Mohammed, your host, as well as the relationship and couples coach. I want to welcome all of you who are watching, whether it's on Sky Channel 752, Twitter or Facebook. A very warm welcome from all of us here on British Muslim TV. We have another discussion tonight, which I'd love for you to join in actually, and you can do so by calling in directly into the studio on 01924 231 083. Do ask the bill payer's permission, as standard network rates do apply. If you want to contact us and send a message, a comment, or any queries that you have for myself or my guest tonight, you can do so by sending it through the WhatsApp service. It's a free service, and that number is 07585835150. With me tonight to discuss the topic of barriers that affect our relationships. So we're going to actually go into it from various angles. I have my guest all the way from North London. North of the UK, actually. So she's not very far, but I love to have her tonight and introduce her. Please welcome her with myself, who is Aishah Javed. Assalamu alaikum, Aishah. How are you?
Alaikum assalam. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very well. For a moment, I thought you're near me in the north of London, but actually you are up north. How are you today? What is it like there where you are?
Oh, alhamdulillah. It's doing good here. It's still cold, but I mean, the UK weather lies.
Well, I'm really excited to have you tonight. I just want to say that you are single and a relationship coach. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself. And we do have a lot of questions about relationship coaches being single. And what do you have in response to that? Because we always assume that you have to be in a relationship in order to be able to maybe guide someone. What's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first of all, I am single, yes, but I have been in a relationship. I was married for quite a long time. I have a little girl. So I think when it comes to that type of thing, it's the experience that the coach can bring you, or the consultant, or the individual that can bring you. And it's all about bringing the experience from their work, from their friends, from their family. And it's not just about just what they've gone through as well. So I think I can speak about my experience going through a marriage, or going through whatever has happened in my community, or the clients that I speak to every single day.
So what is it that you come across a lot of the times that is actually a barrier? Because we're talking about barriers. Now, there's barriers for single people that actually prevents them from actually entering into a relationship. And there are barriers for people that are already in an existing relationship that actually helps to make it fulfilled and content. And remember, just because you're in a relationship, it does not mean that you're actually qualified to give advice. Because a lot of people that we coach, I myself being single, actually are in a relationship and they're not actually seeing things for what they are, and they are not content. They've been married for years, being lonely or unfulfilled. And, you know, we have this kind of issue constantly, all the time. So let's just address a little bit more first as to with the singles. And I think it's also different between men and women. And we are going to obviously talk about the genders as well, because I think it's important. If women are complaining about men and men are complaining about women, or there are issues around it, we want to address this so that we can actually give some practical tips and insights so that people are a little bit aware of it. Because I don't think we're brought up with the skill. No one's brought up, you know, saying, well, you got to go get married and you got to understand someone's emotions, or you got to understand someone's way of being. We're not brought up in that way. It's like, you got to cook, the husband has to provide, and you got to make sure you have a house, and you're going to have so many kids, and then you're going to live with your mother-in-law or by yourself. These are very, the basic things that we address. So what are the barriers that stops an individual who is single from entering into a relationship from your experience?
Wow, I think that's a very big question. I would say the number one thing is actually childhood trauma and the way that individuals are brought up. So if an individual, an individual is brought up in such a lifestyle, they fail to understand any other type of lifestyle. So if we are teaching our children, or if we're growing up and teaching ourselves how to appreciate other cultures, other languages, people around us, then naturally it's easier to talk to different types of people. And one thing I find in my practice is some of the women, and I've heard about the men as well, some of the women and men actually find it really difficult to communicate with the opposite gender as well. So because of our upbringing or the upbringing, a lot of the people find it really difficult to interact with the opposite gender, and they don't know how to interact. So when it comes to that time of getting to find someone or to speak to someone, they're not sure how to go about it. And I feel like that's one of the barriers that I come across in my everyday practice. I don't know how to speak to the opposite gender. I don't know about different cultures. My culture is like this, and I want to stick by it. And they're not open enough to try different things or to speak to different types of people. I would say them two really big things.
I think that's a very, very good point. And I think what you've highlighted is something that we actually just brush under the carpet, is the communication. And that is so true. What I mentioned even before as to how, we have this kind of issue of, not finding your spouse. I think the main thing, like you said, is actually having that lack of confidence to approach the other gender, especially when you come from a Muslim background and you brought up in a particular way. And just to be seen with somebody or standing next to somebody's, all these assumptions, negative assumptions arises, let alone you trying to speak to somebody. So what would be the tips that you can actually give to families to help their children have this kind of communication, or even a change of mindset? Because we're obviously going to bring into the fact that, is it cultural? Is it Islamic that we should be in this way? Or at the same time, what are the tips to even speak to somebody in a respectful way where it does not go against the Islamic practices? So I guess that's what most people are afraid of when they are trying to communicate with the other gender. So what would be your tips, Aishah?
I personally would say when it comes to families, when it comes to even individuals, nowadays the trend that we're seeing is that more people are opening up marital events to make it easier for people to actually communicate with one another, with or without their direct parents, but with someone else, and to make it easier for them to meet each other and speak freely. That's been something that I've always recommended to someone. Go to these events. They are making you address the other gender, and they do teach you sometimes the things to ask as well, the opposite gender. And the other thing I would say is ask your married friends, what do I need to know? How do I say this to him or her? And ask your friends and your family, your married family as well. And just keep it simple. All you need to do is be yourself, ask what you need to, but be respectful when you are asking. Don't be abrupt, just ask nicely. Because that falls in with being a good human, but also being a good Muslim as well. Just keep it simple, ask what you need to, and be respectful when you're speaking to someone.
It's really good that you said that. But again, now I'm going to go back to the fact that, maybe it's quite easy for a man to approach a woman and speak. Now, it might be a little bit more difficult for women in general to be upfront. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't exist, but especially in the Muslim community, it is something that even some guys say, well, I think she's too forward if she comes and talks to me, or, wants to get to know me or whatever. So there is also that factor that we need to consider. Like, we want these relationships, we want to have this kind of communication, but then there's all the stigma and there's all the taboo around around how it should be in society and how it should be seen. And so that's why the girl maybe holds herself back and not even ask the important questions, because she might be looked upon as too forward and too upfront. Because I've heard guys say, like, she's being so intrusive, oh, she's just too talkative. A lot of people don't like talkative, open-minded, and basically comfortable, confident women. I think it's a problem, and we are finding more and more women that are very easily to, say what they feel, be open. Do you think that, men are ready for some people like, women that are outspoken and quite confident and can even lead the conversation? What's your thoughts?
I would say yes and no. I would say yes because first I'm going to address the women actually. For a woman who's in that position, I just want to say to you, think about yourself and think about you being in that marriage and think about how you want to raise your children. So going forward, we want to raise our children in such a way to ask these questions, to be bold, to make decisions on their own, because let's be real, the world is getting meaner every day. You have to stand up for yourself, and your parents are not going to be there every day. So you as an individual have got to think about that in your marriage. And you also have to realize that when you're in that marriage, it takes two people to be married. So you got to ask the right questions before the marriage so that you know what you're getting into. And then to the men, I would say yes and no, because yes, they understand that women are getting more into the workforce, getting more into being leaders, not only of the home, but of the world, really. And they understand that change. But then there are some that don't understand that change. And to those, I would say, ask your father for a woman. He'll probably be able to find you someone.
No, that's lovely. I'm going to pick up on that actually, but we are coming into a short break. That's gone really quickly for the first part of the introduction, and I hope that this is kind of like giving you some insight as to how the conversation is going to go. But we've got so much more golden nuggets that we are going to talk about. Make sure you stay where you are, and if you do want to send in your questions, I will definitely be reading them out. I will keep you anonymous if you wish for me to do so. And if you are sending them through Facebook, I will definitely also have a look at that in the break. But again, I'm loving what's being said so far. And inshallah, we will see you shortly. Make sure that you do contact us, and we will definitely be continuing in a really short while. And we'll see you in a few moments. See you soon.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We're having an amazing conversation so far with Aishah, who is talking about the barriers that keeps us stuck from either entering into a relationship or while you're in a relationship to have that relationship fulfilled. So I've actually been looking at some of the questions that's coming through on the Facebook page, and someone's already asked a question for you, Aishah, and that is, why are you still single?
My answer to that is when I do get married, you'll be the first one that I invite.
Thank you. Okay, that is brilliant. Obviously, I actually want to add to that. Firstly, there's nothing wrong in being single, and it does not define you. I think when you come from a different insight, you are a little bit more, different in the way in which you choose, and doesn't mean that, you can't find somebody that there's something wrong with you. It actually means that you will actually be comfortable and confident enough to be able to find your match. So, and sometimes it takes a bit of time, and especially when you have an insight like how we do, then, we actually have to filter a lot. Okay, as much as there's many men out there and there's many women out there, we need to make sure that that puzzle fits. And a lot of the time people are matching and mixing with each other because they're not a match. So it takes time. And when you are single, it's because you're taking your time to find it. And while you're in that single mode, then you can still be thriving and you can still be happy and content and whole and fulfilled. So even though we talk about relationships because it's a natural need for connection, yes, it's half your deen, but it does not signify that you are any less than anyone else. And the fact that we are coaches coaching a lot of couples actually that are in relationships with issues, which means that we need to address it when you are single so that when you are choosing, you can maintain in your relationships. And just because you are in a relationship does not mean that everybody is actually satisfied. And that's why we have so many issues. And that's why the show continues with various topics and various discussions in order to uplift the household and to make sure that you have the right information, because we are changing over time. Aishah, you were discussing before about how we need to change our mindset, how we need to raise our children differently and to bring them up so that they can be confident as men and women to speak to the other gender. But how real is that in our Muslim community? Tell us a little bit more about what is the barriers? Do you not think that even sometimes family expectation could be a little bit of a barrier because they have one and you have another? You do things differently because you're more Western and they have, a more cultural way. Do you think that still exists in our community?
Absolutely, absolutely. I do think that a lot of people want to hold on to their own traditions, which I can completely respect. But I also think that as well as tradition, you also have to understand the community that you live into right now, the British values that we have, or the values that you have in your country. They can coincide with the traditions that you already have, but you just got to be mindful of how you portray that. And I think, touching on the point you made earlier, I think I want to talk more about how there is no age limit to ever get married.
Yes.
That is definitely a really, really big barrier that we probably see all the time. The number one question is, but I'm 20 something or I'm 30 something, 40 something, and I'm still not married. My time is running out. Well, I personally don't believe anyone has a time. I feel when you're ready and when you find the right person, that's the right time to get married. And for every single person, that's so different. For me, it could be different. For you, it could be different. And to appreciate that there's no time, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're any less of a person, man or woman. It doesn't mean anything like that. It doesn't mean you're less of a person in terms of your family status or where you're from. Nothing doesn't define you. When the time is right, you will get married and you'll find the right person.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I think it's very interesting and it's very important that you do raise that, because we are actually defining singles as if they are not good enough and there's something wrong with them. And especially when it comes to age and after a certain age. And of course, we do have a biological clock, this, that, and the other. But regardless, the people are getting married also. It's not just about the age. They're getting married several times over and over. And that's become the norm as well. I'm not saying that that should be it, but if, that's how life is happening. And again, it just means that, you've learned and you've developed and you've grown and you've gone into the next one. And it can actually be something that now we are becoming quite, used to. I actually do have a question that's come through a WhatsApp. It says, hi, salam to Fahima and Aishah. Thank you for the show today. And thank you for coming on, talking about the barriers that affect our relationships. And communication is definitely something that they agree with is a barrier of not knowing how. However, as an advice, what is the best way to approach and start a conversation with a lady and definitely not come across like as if you harassing her and you're a good Muslim? That's a good question. Thank you for sending that through. I really appreciate it. That's true, actually, because some guys, may not have the skill of, approaching a lady and she might take it differently. Do you have any tips of, what to say or how to approach a lady?
Yeah, I think from the experience that I come from, and me personally, I would say as straight to the point as possible, as in, I do want to get to know you, but only for the purposes of getting married. Is this possible? And then you've been really intentional with how you communicate to the individual, and they know where you are and what stance you're on, and you know where they stand. So if they tell you, I'm not looking for that, straight away you already know that, so you're not wasting any time.
Yeah, absolutely great. That is so true. I think the intention and to put the intention out there is so important because a lot of the times everyone is so scared to actually say what they really want. And then, we're not actually getting to the point and we're not getting onto the same page. And that's how you know if that person's coming to you with the correct intention. If they put it straight up, like you said, I'd love to get to know you for marriage. I am serious about my future. Yes, we're not going to get married in the next maybe, a couple of days or weeks, but that is my intention. And then straight up that, you're serious and they're serious if they respond. We actually have another question that's actually, or a statement, I would say, that's on Facebook. It says that simple answer is simply the in-laws should stay out of the marriage and let the couples pave their own path to success. There's ups and downs to what a true marriage and partner is, and one that struggles through it together. What's your thoughts on that? Because I think that, the in-laws get a lot of slack every now and again for being involved. So, what do you think about that?
I think I agree with this statement, actually. I do think in-laws sometimes meddle in things that they don't need to, but that's only because, from what I see, is although it might not be easy for you to see, I think it's out of love because they really want the marriage to work, or they really see certain things that are the gaps in the marriage because they're more experienced. But what I would say is having clear boundaries with your family and their family before the marriage. So you know exactly what you're getting into, and then the person you're marrying, your spouse, knows exactly what they're getting into too. And know that if in-laws do get involved, you need to understand that you two individuals are in the marriage, and in-laws, whichever side it's from, they're just like the second phase, right? So be limited in what you tell them because it is your marriage and it should be you two first of all coming together and speaking about it. Goes back to the first point that we made about communication. If you have a really good communication between you, then most likely the in-laws won't even have a say because you'll understand as an individual and the other individual as a couple, what the marriage is about. You're in this together.
I love that. Very true. I think that's very good advice, actually, to have the strong connection between you and your spouse, and hopefully any outside external sort of like interference does not really have that much of an impact. Because I think, we're not having the skill for it. We actually have a few more questions coming through. So before I even go into the rest of the conversation, I'm going to read this out. Thank you so much for everyone that's interacting and engaging. And I think it's really an important topic that everyone's feeling that they can relate to. So it says, as a divorce coach and relationship coach, what are the best ways you two would say that to move on from any relationship? So move on from a person. That's a really good question. Thank you for sending that through.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
There's so many different things I can say right now. The first thing I would definitely say is please allow yourself to grieve. If you need to cry, please cry. Doesn't matter what anybody else says, you need to cry because it's a release of emotions. And if you do not release any of those emotions, it stores in the body and later on it will come out, or quite quickly it'll come out in things like anger. And you get angry at everything, you get angry at life, and then honestly, you're in a really big rut at that time and you don't know how to get out. So you're basically then digging a hole bigger and bigger and bigger and deeper, and you don't know how to get out. So I would definitely say the number one thing is please grieve and allow any emotion to come up. The second thing I would say is keep a track of how you feel. So whether that's through journaling or even making videos of yourself and telling yourself, this is what I did today. I felt like this when this person said this. It made me feel sad or it made me feel angry. And then by the end of the month or even in 2 months, you can look back and you'll be able to identify different patterns in your own behavior. So you might be able to identify different words that can trigger you, different situations, different people, and then you find your triggers and then you can address them.
I love that. I think it's such a good idea. Honestly, I think what you've just said is absolutely amazing. The fact that we need to check ourselves, and you can actually coach yourself, and you can actually see how you've changed and grown over time. When you look back, you realize that actually, even though it felt so bad at the beginning, it is actually something that you can overcome, and you have grown. And it is a grieving process actually when you are going through a breakup, and it's similar to when it's like any sort of loss of even death. So you need to understand that you're going to go through so many different stages and phases. And Aisha, you're absolutely spot on with what you said, is to recognize it, basically make sure the agreement, the emotions there, and you address it, and you understand how you're feeling, and sort of go through that. We do have much more questions that I've got to read out, but we are coming into another short break. I will make sure that I do read this out afterwards. You stay exactly where you are, and we will continue this really interesting conversation with Aisha. And I hope that you can join us in a few moments, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Salam.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV, sponsored by SingleMuslim.com. We're having such an exciting conversation today, and you know what? We've got so many messages that I have to get through. So please bear with me, and I'm going to read them out now, Aisha. And I know you're going to be overwhelmed a little bit, so I'm going to help you out whenever you can, so that we can actually, address this together. But yeah, tell me what you think about this question. We've obviously addressed the one about moving on from a relationship before the break, and we said that, it is like a grieving process, so understand that. So the other one says, Salam, can you address the barrier of having stepchildren and myself finding husband, changing his behavior, relationship towards me in presence of them? So over the years, resulting in marriage going stale, putting, them first, and, me sidelined. I guess, the dynamics of the house when you have stepchildren is actually quite testing, especially when, they're not the biological parents. I guess there's a barrier before you enter into a relationship if you've already got children, and also while you're in that relationship as they change over time, and especially when they get to those teenage years. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course. I think the first thing I would say is please have the conversation before you tie the knot. Have the conversation, have a list of questions. If you got to take a notepad and a pen, do that, just so you get all the questions, you remember them. Ask the questions like, what are my responsibilities as a step parent? How would you like me to discipline them if we are disciplining them? Who's doing things like school runs if they are that age? How do I address them? How do they address me? All these types of questions, please ask before you get in the marriage. And then the second part is, if you do go for that marriage and you're in the marriage and things come up, number one, communication. You need to communicate with your spouse and ask them. And number two, have some grace, because you and your spouse don't know the future. Your kids don't know the future either. So you don't know what's going to come up. When a situation comes up, address it kindly with the other person and say, this is what I'm finding really difficult right now, and I don't know how to navigate it. Can you please help me? And then as a family, you can have bonding time like that as well, and talk about things that are coming up for you as a family, what you're finding difficult. I would say them two things.
Very, very good. And I think it's really important. And I hope that whoever sent these questions is listening. And I also want to thank all of you for sending that through. It is really a testing time when you have stepchildren, but I have seen it work. I have coached families, and I've seen how it can develop. And even if it's not biological parents, you still can have and be a role model. You can still be that friend. You can still be that support for that family, and involve the children depending on their age, and how you can to obviously maneuver and, make sure that they are also some part of the conversations and involvement to a certain extent, even if they're very young. It can be done in different ways, just, according to their age, and just make sure that when they do develop, their mindset is also developing. So they will change, and you need to address it again and again, because the situation will change over time. And yes, you might think that you're giving a lot of times to your children, but I think whether it's stepchildren or not, children are demanding. And whoever doesn't have the child, they need to understand that this is how the dynamics works. And you need to sort of educate them in it. And you have to obviously get them involved as well. And hopefully they can be part of that family unit, so that it's not like as if you are just, doing you and your kids, even though you're in a new relationship. So yeah, there's lots of tips that we have around this. And I could talk about this myself for such a long time, but we do have another question. They're really coming in quite fast. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. As Muslims, we know that we get marriage proposals. How do we get to know the other person who is correct for us Islamically? And how do we find someone without the awkwardness of parents getting involved, basically like halal dating, for example? So, we talk about halal dating a lot, like, what does that even mean? And, how do you get to know someone and know that they're correct for you?
Well, I think there's 2 points for me. Number one is, if you want to go meet the individual, take someone with you. They don't need to sit next to you. They can sit a few tables away, etc. And if the other person is serious, they probably won't say no. That's one thing you'd realize. If the person is serious, they're not going to say no to that. Take someone with you, maybe someone that already is married, so you feel comfortable already. And the second thing is, involve someone that has the experience already, and speak to them about it and ask them, what type of questions do I need to ask? That's nothing too personal or un-Islamic, really. And have a list of questions that you can ask going forward.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, the only way to also gauge if those questions are appropriate is that you got to switch it to think, if someone was to ask me, how would I feel? And, it's a good way to gauge as to what exactly is appropriate or not. So put yourself in that situation, even if it is like, obviously you're talking to the opposite gender, you will still have a sense of knowing and understanding. If someone was to ask me that question, how would I feel? So I think you've given us so much food for thought. We do have another question. This is slightly different. It says, Salaam alaikum, sister. My question is that, is it okay for a husband to sleep in a separate room? Now, that is something I would like to start off actually saying. Intimacy is part of relationship, and whatever dynamics you have in the house, that is something that, if that is missing, there are different components that actually make a relationship. It's the passion, the commitment, the responsibility. And within that passion is, the physical touch. And it actually does make a difference when you are trying to get close to your partner and connect with your partner, that you should have that interaction. There's many reasons why people get married. And one of them is that when we're not allowed to, be in a particular way with, a partner, when you are in a Islamic marriage, this is your right to be with them. So it is something that we do need to address, the intimacy. And if there isn't that intimacy, it doesn't mean that you don't, have intimacy, but when you are in the same room, just to be close to each other and near each other can create that closeness and connection. So that needs to be addressed as to why that is. And there must be something deeper involved. And you do need to address this a little bit further. And I would advise that you do seek some further assistance and guidance. And by the way, as much as we're getting all these questions and we're trying to answer them, you do need to seek further advice. We do have that support here on British Muslim TV. And if you want to speak to somebody, you can do so by contacting BritishMuslim.tv/support. And this is something that we take very seriously and we must address. And if it's something that we are giving you here on the show, it's only a snippet of what you really need to deal with and to take further on your own account. So You know what, Aisha, you've given us so much food for thought. Do you have any thoughts on what I've just said about sleeping separately to your spouse?
Yeah, I was going to pick up on the same subject that you did as well. Like, if you are sleeping separately, there's something that needs to be addressed. So I know of most of the points that I brought up are going back to the same point, which is communication. And I think that's because it's my highest value is communication. Because a lot of the things that I always come back to is communication because of my practice. And I find that it could have been just that one conversation for one of the spouse to have with the other person to make things so much clearer for them. So if this is happening in your house, please make sure you go speak to your spouse, tell them how you feel, tell them how it makes you feel like during the day, at night, tell them how it makes you feel in your marriage and where you feel like you stand. And most likely the other person doesn't know how you feel because we are not mind readers. We're not mind readers. So I would say definitely address it. Seek further assistance in this. If it's something that seriously needs to be addressed in a different way, please go and do that. Because like you said earlier, like intimacy is such a big part of a relationship, a healthy relationship. And if it's not there, then it can have a serious effect on your marriage.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, Aisha, that, if people are needing some further advice and guidance, make sure that you do seek that. And if you want to, we also have that guidance here available on British Muslim TV. So make sure you contact BritishMuslim.tv/support for any further guidance and assistance that goes beyond this conversation. I actually have another sort of like question for you, actually, with regards to Islamic spiritual leaders not being in tune with today's generation, because we understand the rules, we understand the regulations, but is it actually being sort of like addressed with what is the social issues that we have and, some of the things that are going on? Do you think that they're in line and they're actually giving the advice? Because as much as we are coaches and we're doing certain things, we do need scholars to actually also intervene. And I do listen to a lot of people that are speaking, but do we have that access unless it's on YouTube or far away? What is your thoughts? Because we need this in the community.
I think it's getting better. And I know there's the other side of it. And I think we are lagging. We're desperately lagging, but I think we are getting better with the gap between just a traditional scholar and, let's say, a psychologist or a consultant or a coach, and the gap is getting less and less and less, becoming narrower and narrower now. But I also think individuals themselves are taking upon themselves to seek knowledge where they need to, and getting more into self-development and understanding themselves, because everything comes from ourselves. In order to have a successful relationship as a wife or as a husband or as a parent, it all starts inside you. So you need to address yourself before you address anything else. I think that's getting there.
No, definitely. And I'm glad that we raised that, actually, because you're right. We are definitely getting better. There's always work to be done, but I think we've definitely moved a very long way. And there's lots of lectures out there from scholars, imams, who are really, really addressing some of the cultural, social issues that we have in our household, in our community. And, we've definitely can be quite proud of that. And obviously, with the more work that needs to be done, that's why we have this kind of show and these episodes, so that maybe they can have a little bit more insight as to what more needs dealing. And you obviously have to also voice that to your local mosques and imams so that they can be in the next, khutbah. We are coming up to another short break. I'm so excited that we're going to continue. And hopefully we will see you in a few moments where we will continue the conversation with Aisha. And don't go away.
With 3 million members searching, SingleMuslim.com proudly sponsors Single Muslim Live.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Single Muslim Live here on British Muslim TV. I just want to say firstly, thank you so much to all of you who are not just watching, but majority of you who are sending your questions and comments through. The engagement's absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so grateful to be able to sit here and serve you and be able to, take your questions and relay them so that we can actually have some practical tips, because this is really important. This is not just for entertainment. This is really something that we want to address. We want to make sure that you actually get some real value from these episodes, and looking by the interaction and, seeing how people are actually, interacting with us and sending us questions, which again, it's coming through again. Okay. Now, the other question I have for you, Aishah, is what's the best way to contact you for coaching, if that's okay to ask? A barrier that affects a relationship could be religion, as some people could live in an area that isn't around many Muslims and mostly English people, and could they find it difficult to date someone? What's your thoughts? And yeah, please share your details. Thank you again for that message.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think the quickest answer you're going to get from me is through my Instagram page, which is Aishah_Javed. And then my name is right there in the corner. In regards to getting to know people and more on the religion side of things, I can completely understand, because we have a lot of revert sisters that come through my page. And then I always refer the revert brothers over to people that are more suitable for them. And I can understand how not being around that community can really take a toll on the way the person sees themselves and also sees like marriage, for example. What do you think, Fahima, about this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I understand now that we are in locations where it might be very difficult to meet people in your location. But don't forget, everyone's doing things online. Okay. Remember, we were in COVID, we were in the pandemic, and actually the dating apps were absolutely buzzing with people trying to get to know each other. And that is the new age anyway on social media. Obviously, you've got to know the process to take the steps. So there's no excuse. The global world has become a lot smaller because we can access each other online. And it is actually a very safe space. You just got to obviously take the precautions when you are speaking to somebody and understand, how they are going to be filtered, so that that they're serious and they're genuine. So that's another thing that you need to consider. But don't be sort of like taken back that you're not in an area where you have to physically meet them or bump into somebody. Because ideally that would be amazing and great, right? But honestly speaking, really try different avenues. And being on a safe space, there's like lots of places out there online. Joining even SingleMuslim.com is one of a good start if you want to go and put yourself out there to meet people. And you might be very surprised actually that they might be closer to you than you think. So I would really open up your focus and your horizon as to what are the options of looking for somebody if it's not in your vicinity. Okay, so that would be my sort of thought. Now, I have so many questions for you, Aishah, and I didn't even get a chance with all the questions from the viewers today, which is amazing, actually, because your questions is what really counts. The interaction that, you're getting tonight, Aishah, is phenomenal. And please do contact her. She's amazing and she knows what she's talking about. So I would also ask you, when it comes to the barrier being ourselves, sometimes we have a particular way or an expectation or the way we think. And especially now with, social media can be great, but on the other hand, it can actually also hinder you. So again, do you think that we ourselves can be the barriers to our potential spouses and relationships?
Yes, I think we can be our number one enemy, honestly, because there's the mindset that we have or the thoughts that we have, like, I'm not good enough, I don't look good, I can't be like that, I'm never going to be able to get married, I'm never going to be able to do this. The language that we use with ourselves is incredibly powerful, and you hear it all the time. I can't, I won't, I couldn't, I shouldn't, that type of thing. Whereas it should be empowering. I should, I can, I will, I am going to, that type of language. I definitely think that if you don't address the things that you're thinking about now that are negative, and you do get married, they are going to carry on to that marriage. They are going to rub off on your spouse or your children or those around you, and it will come out in a not so good way. So before you even think about getting married, look at who you are first. Find out who you are as a male or a female, what you like, what you love to do, and don't change that just because you're getting married. Like marriage, what I believe as a coach and as a woman as well, marriage is an add-on to get to the final destination. And it's not the end all or the be all. It's not one or the other. There's not a stream in this. It's just an add-on to get to the final destination, but you need to know who you are as an individual first. Because the one thing I want to say, make really, really clear here is don't ever lower your expectations just because you think you have to get married. Like, I have to get married right now, so I need to quickly get married because, I'm getting old now. You hear that all the time. And because of that mentality or that mindset, people are lowering their expectations or their own standards just to suit the other narrative of, I've got to quickly get married. And I think when you're getting into a relationship with that, you have to put your intention right first. So you're not getting married because you want to get married. You're saying because you have to get married. And that starts off any relationship with the left foot, the wrong foot. Why would you want to do something like that? It's just not a healthy thing. So address yourself first, your own mindset, your own identity. Be confident with yourself first. Whether you're a male or a female, it does not matter. Be comfortable with who you are first, and then look at getting married, because you can then give everything that you do have to that person, but you can't pour if you have an empty cup. So you've got to look at fulfilling yourself first.
Very, very wise words there. And I hope that everyone was listening to that, because I think you really did sum it up so beautifully. And I'm glad that we actually ended with kind of, the self, because we can be self-sabotaging our own relationships and potential with the self-talk, with the mindset, with the lack of self-esteem and confidence, and even allowing the external pressures to actually, interfere with the way in which we are. And yes, we can't take away the in-laws. We can't take away the fact that we are a certain age. We can't take away the fact that sometimes people are single out of, not their choices. They get divorced, not out of their choices. They are, got children and they're single moms and dads. And they still deserve a really good relationship, and they can do it. And what you said about even, you thinking and being in a particular way of, lowering your standard. We're not saying that. We have to understand how we define expectations. We shouldn't have expectations which is unnecessary, but we shouldn't lower expectations when it comes to your values, your core beliefs. And again, that comes to you knowing yourself. Do you think we are spiritual enough to be able to even have that foundation, which is strong, Aishah? We are coming into the last 5 minutes, so answer that question and give me some of your final thoughts as well, because I want to make sure that we're going to get the best out of you tonight. So what again would you sort of close with, as well as addressing the fact of, spirituality within the individual?
I think in regards to spirituality, I think we're focusing on the other person more than we're focusing on ourselves. Whereas if we look at ourselves and what we can bring to the table and how we can serve the other person, then we're less concerned of how we're going to get that back. So right now, what we see is that, what am I going to get from this marriage, or what am I going to get from this relationship? Although sometimes you do have to think like that, it depends on the dynamics of the relationship. But I would say start with, what can I give? And when you can give, then you should be able to receive, if it's a healthy marriage or a healthy relationship that you're getting into. In terms of my reflections, I would definitely say the first thing that we spoke about as well is communication. Make sure you understand what communication is and how you communicate as well to yourself and to those around you. Do establish boundaries with yourself and with other people, and also know your, like you said earlier, your values, your core beliefs, and who you are before getting into any type of relationship.
Oh my gosh, Aisha, you really, started strong and you ended even stronger with everything that you've said. And I can't thank you enough for being with us tonight and sharing your insights and everything that you said. I cannot have put it any better myself. So I really do urge people to contact, follow, like, and definitely go onto Aisha's page, get in touch with her. She's definitely someone that you can work with and relatable, very experienced, humble. And honestly, I really want to thank you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. I want to also thank everyone that's watching. They have been absolutely amazing to support the show, to tune in every week. And such an amazing night tonight with all your questions. And I hope we've given you some practical tips. And the thing is, like we said, a lot of the stuff is just surface. But if you need deeper sort of like advice and guidance, please make sure that you do seek that. And here on British Muslim TV, we do offer that. So finally, before we end, I want to make sure that you do have that contact detail. And that is BritishMuslim.tv/support. Again, we are having these shows every single week, and we cannot do it without your interaction with us. We do even have a lot of the questions that are sent to me via email, and I try and answer them, whether it's on the TikTok videos that we have or whether it's here on the show with my guests. Again, please keep sending them through, not just on the show, but throughout. And we do receive them. I do try and make sure that I check everything so that I'm interacting with you and I'm not far reach, so that we can actually have some better relationships for whatever situation you're dealing with, for whatever kind of walk of life you're in. We are here, and especially on British Muslim TV, to serve you and to bring these shows so that you can have powerful relationships, for yourselves or, whether it's your family member. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to my guest, Aisha, and from everyone here on British Muslim TV. Have an amazing evening, and we'll see you same time next week. Assalamu alaikum.